You know that old saying, truth is stranger than fiction? Well, it's a cliche for a reason. Because sometimes real life cooks up stories that are so wild, so full of unbelievable twists, that if you saw them in a movie, you'd say, no way, that could never happen. So is truth really stranger than fiction? We're about to put that to the test. I've got 3 stories for you, all of them 100% true, that are going to blur the line between what's real and what seems completely impossible.
First up, we've got a story about a coincidence so perfect it feels like it was written in the stars. Then, we'll dive into a crime so deceptive it plays out like a psychological thriller. And we'll finish with a bizarre hoax that spiraled into a deadly, nationwide delusion. Let's get into it.
All right, so our first story kicks off on a street in El Paso, Texas. Meet Captain Alan Falby, a 37-year-old police officer. He loves his job, he loves his motorcycle, and on this particular day, he's in the middle of a high-speed chase.
The year is 1934. The truck he's chasing suddenly slams on its brakes, and Falby has nowhere to go. He crashes hard. He's thrown from his bike, skids across the pavement, and ends up with his 500-pound motorcycle crushing his legs. And underneath him, a pool of blood is starting to grow, fast.
He's pinned, he's bleeding out, and things are looking grim. But then, 2 strangers come running over. They manage to lift the bike off him, revealing this massive, horrifying gash in his leg. One of the men, a guy named Alfred Smith, doesn't even hesitate. He calmly takes Falby's own necktie, finds a stick nearby, and twists them into a perfect, life-saving tourniquet. He literally stopped the bleeding just minutes before it would have been too late.
Okay, now fast forward 4 years to 1938. Captain Falby is fully recovered, he's back on patrol, and a call comes in about a bad car wreck. He's the first one there. He finds a man unconscious with a severe bleeding gash in his leg. I mean, the exact same kind of injury he had. Falby knows exactly what to do. He whips off his own necktie, grabs a stick, and makes a tourniquet.
And here's where the story just gets insane. As Falby is waiting for the ambulance, he takes a closer look at the face of the man he just saved, and he realizes it's Alfred Smith, the very same man who had saved his life 4 years earlier. They hadn't seen each other once in all that time. When people later called Falby a hero, he just shrugged and said, "One good tourniquet deserves another." You just can't make this stuff up.
All right, so from that incredible story of fate, we're going to take a sharp turn into something much, much darker. It's 1984. We're in a kind of rundown apartment complex in Hong Kong. A young electrical engineer named Ha Ron is walking his girlfriend, Jen Yu, home after a date.
So he walks her up to her apartment on the 13th floor, says goodnight, and gets back into the building's notoriously sketchy elevator to head down. But somewhere between the 7th and 6th floors, the whole thing just lurches to a dead stop. The doors are jammed. Then he smells this weird chemical odor, and the floor of the elevator car just erupts in flames.
Total panic. Ron manages to punch open an escape hatch in the ceiling and climb out onto the top of the car. Meanwhile, his girlfriend realizes he never came back outside, so she calls the fire department. When the firefighters get there, they pry open the doors on the 7th floor and find this empty, burnt-out elevator car just covered in blood. They look down the shaft, and there, huddled on a tiny ledge 1 floor below, is a badly injured man. They pull him to safety, assuming he's the victim.
They get the man onto a stretcher, and just then, Jen Yu comes running down the stairs. She takes one look at the injured survivor, she freezes, and then she says the 5 words that change absolutely everything. "That's not my boyfriend."
So, who was this guy? It was a man named Leo W. Zhang. He was actually a mutual friend. In fact, he's the one who introduced the couple. But here's the thing. Leo was secretly, dangerously obsessed with Jen Yu. He couldn't stand seeing her with Ron. He wasn't a victim at all. He was the killer.
His plan was just horrifyingly methodical. He'd cut the power to trap Ron, then he climbed on top of the elevator car, poured kerosene down through the hatch, and set it on fire. He just waited for Ron to climb out to escape the flames, and when he did, Leo was there waiting for him. He stabbed him, threw his body 7 stories down the elevator shaft, and then jumped to a lower ledge, injuring himself on purpose so he could pose as another survivor. An absolutely chilling deception that landed him a life sentence.
And for our last story, we're shifting gears again, from a single, twisted crime to a delusion that swept an entire nation. The year is 1966. The place is Madrid, Spain. And a man named Jose Luis Peña, who considers himself a total skeptic, has just joined a little UFO club. He'd seen something weird in the sky he couldn't explain, and he wanted to understand what these people were all about.
Pretty soon after he joins, club members start getting these really strange letters in the mail. They're typewritten, no return address, just this bizarre little symbol on the envelope. The letters claim to be from an alien race called the Umites, from a planet called Umo, and said they were already living here on Earth, in secret. Now, Peña thought this was all ridiculous, but the rest of the club, they were absolutely ecstatic. They believed it.
As you can see, things escalated fast. The story totally exploded when a newspaper published a photo of a supposed UFO with that exact same Umite symbol on the bottom. Now remember, this is 1967. Faking a photo like this wasn't easy. The story went viral. Suddenly, thousands of these Umite letters were being sent to people all over the country, and belief in these secret aliens became a massive national phenomenon.
Now you might think, okay, a weird but basically harmless craze, right? Well, no. The belief in the Unimites started to have terrifying and very real consequences. This was so much more than a joke. 2 men took their own lives, leaving behind notes that said, "The aliens call us." 2 sisters died in a murder-suicide that police directly linked to the Umite letters they'd been receiving. Actual dangerous cults started popping up, and one of them even targeted the young son of our original skeptic, Jose Luis Peña. For 30 long years, this mystery continued. Then, in 1996, the truth finally came out on national TV. The person who started the entire thing confessed. And it was Jose Luis Peña himself, the skeptic. He admitted he faked the first letters and the UFO photo as a social experiment, just to prove to his club how gullible people could be. He only wanted to prove a point, but the lie took on a monstrous life of its own that he could never, ever control.
So what do we take away from all this? We've got a real-life miracle, a crime that was disguised to look like a random accident, and a complete work of fiction that thousands of people desperately wanted to be true. Each story, in its own way, really messes with our idea of what's real and shows just how easily our perception can be twisted, whether it's by pure chance, a master manipulator, or even our own desire to believe.
This quote from the Umite story really says it all, doesn't it? The UFO club told Peña, the skeptic, to keep an open mind because they were so desperate for this to be the real deal. It just shows how powerful that human desire to believe in something extraordinary really is. Powerful enough to completely shut down logic and reason. And that kind of leaves us with one last big question. From a life-saving coincidence to a life-ending delusion, these stories prove that the line between fact and fiction can be incredibly thin. It really makes you wonder, where do we draw that line for ourselves? And more importantly, how do we know when we've crossed it?